All right. So I know I'm moving through this quick because I want to get to Mike. So this is the second installation in our customer success thought leader summer webinar series. Could I add any more words to that title? So what this is we are featuring a new industry thought leader every week for the entire summer, give you fresh perspectives, new ideas, solve new challenges together. Today I am so excited that we are hosting Dr. Mike. And so we are going to allow him to come on, introduce himself, talk a little bit about his topic before we get started. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Hey, Christy, thank you so much. I'm so excited about being here.
Oh,
This
we were
is this is
thrilled.
so exciting. I'm such a big fan of client success and the things that you all do for the community. So this is excellent. Yeah, and seeing everyone here, I even saw someone say Bull City, which is Durham, North Carolina, which is that's where I'm from. Well, here, that's where I live. So I'm really excited about it. Again, I'm Dr. Mike Lee. I have the doctor on my name, if you can see that, only because I just got my doctorate. So it's not going to stay there for a long
Are
time,
you
but I
kidding me?
have to
You
keep it.
earned that. You
I
keep
have
that
I have to
forever.
keep that for a little while,
No, no,
right?
you keep that forever, Mike. If I had a doctor, I just want to add it just because I want to be as cool as you. But if I had doctor, I would make my kid call me Dr. Mom. Like I would just be using that
My
title every day.
soon as when the kids got home after I defended my dissertation, they were saying calling me Dr. Daddy, and that was the best
Oh,
title I could ever want for, Dr. Daddy. And
I
so
mean, life's complete, right? When you have
yeah, that's
Dr.
right.
Daddy as your title,
That's
like
right.
that's
It
it.
was all worth it. It was all worth it. But I'm really excited about being here. I've been working on this idea about specialized CSMs. We're going to talk about what that means. And you can see it's SpCSMs. It's really about just what does it mean to be a specialized CSM? How can someone who's interested in getting into customer success leverage that? But also, how can leaders leverage specialized CSMs, search for specialized CSMs to kind of really help their organization kind of grow and mature a little bit better.
Well,
So
this
I'm
is
really
super exciting, Mike. I think we're all thrilled to hear you get started. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go off camera because nobody cares about me today.
mhm.
Um, Mike, you can start sharing your screen.
All
If
right.
you need me or anything comes up, you let me know. Otherwise, for everyone who's on the webinar today, I'll be manning the chat. So if you've got things, questions, I will happily try my best to answer for you. Otherwise, any questions, please drop them in the Q&A and we will make sure that we've got some time at the end to get to it. So Mike, take it away.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
We
Are you
can.
seeing mine?
Looks
Okay,
great.
very good. That's awesome. I'm really bad at making sure you're seeing the right thing because I'll just start talking.
Nope. I see
So,
the right thing. I
all
think
right.
everyone else does too. We're good.
Very good. All right. So, hi everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. It really means a lot to have so many people here to kind of talk about this. Again, this is something I've been kind of thinking about for about a year now, and I started enhancing my team with specialized CSMs. And I think this can be a way that, leaders or hiring managers can kind of supplement their team for maturity, but also again, those who want to join customer success, how do we reach back in our previous experience and then uh, figure out how we can fit into a customer success organization servicing the industries in which we came from? So enhance your customer value and engagement with specialized CSMs. That's my title. So hiring is hard. If you're a hiring manager, you get that, you understand that. And even getting hired is hard nowadays. It's a really tough thing. And so when I talk about my needs for hiring a CSM, I think about three things. There's technical knowledge. Now, I divide that into two different things. One is like programming, right? You're in the code, you can look at that. CSMs don't need that. The technical knowledge a CSM needs is really be able to understand the logic, how the product works, and how it can benefit the customer itself. Then customer success practices, traditional customer success practice, what you may learn at a certification, what is a success plan, what is risk management, what does engagement look like, what are QBRs or EBRs or so forth. In that kind of terminology and understanding how to engage, a rich engagement with your customer to help sell that value or help to realize that value, just regular customer success practice. And then industry knowledge. How can you connect with your customers, your point of contacts, and understand deeply what they're dealing with, the plight of your customer, and why they're using your product to do what they need to do. Now, um, So these are kind of three things I kind of look at when I hire, and what I look at and candidates. But 2 out of 3 ain't bad. A lot of times you're not going to find someone with all three of these. I've been in customer success for a while now, and I know that there's never been a real hard definition of what skills, a good CSM comes from. So a lot of times you see CSM practices and the ability for them to understand the product. Many times it's not a lot of industry knowledge behind that. But I think that's where, we can find a little balance in how we do this, how we understand what CSMs do and understand what CSMs can give to an organization, but also your customers itself. So generally speaking, now I'm a generalist. I'm a CSM generalist, but I believe the industry needs, or any industry, customer success industry, needs more than just generalist CSMs. Knowledge about the ability to learn about a product and the ability to bring the customer success knowledge of just about the customer success practice or the discipline of customer success to a role is a good thing. It's not a bad thing at all, but that is really a generalist. You're kind of coming in as a CSM and you are using these practices to help your product grow. But I believe in order for us to mature as organizations, for us to grow our organizations, we need a little bit more than generalist CSMs. I don't think there's any room to sway only with specialist CSMs or only with generalist CSMs. I think there needs to be a good mix, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I want you to think just for a moment, which is more important when you're when you're thinking about a role? Is it CSM experience or industry experience? Now, I searched high and low for equal scales, so it would be equal, not to say that industry experience is more important than CSM experience, but this is really the only thing I could come up with. So I apologize for the tilt. I'm not trying to say one is better than the other, but I really want you to think about that. What is it that industry experience can bring you that CSM experience can't? I'll tell you one thing. The one thing you cannot onboard or train somebody in is industry experience. Either you have it when you get here or you don't. Now, you can grow in it. You can understand what your customer is doing. You've been in customer success for, say, for example, government. If your customers are government agencies, well, you can definitely learn about them. You can learn about their challenges. But if you have not worked in the government space, you're not going to have that industry experience and that deep understanding of the deep plights that the customers have or the agencies have that, will help inform how these customers are using your tools. So that's the one thing you can't train is industry experience. You can teach somebody CSM work, right? You can get a certification on that, but you can't grow that industry experience from within your organization. Well, then, if that's the case, how do we bring that industry experience in to what we're doing as leaders, or even how do I, as an individual, enhance an organization who needs someone with industry experience? Well, I'm glad you asked, but before we get there, I just want to introduce myself a little bit more here. So I've been in the industry about 26 years, I think 27 now, about 15 years in customer success. I started out as a customer success advisor, which is at Aptio, it was a slightly above a CSM. It was more, the high level conversations, the CEOs, CTOs, and so forth. And that's when I fell in love with it. I was a Java developer. I was a systems engineer. I was one of those tech people, but I saw the light. And I think, once I got my MBA, I saw the light to where I needed to move over to the business side. I'm a published author, and I have won awards for cinematography. Maybe we could talk about that at a later time. I have an MBA and obviously my doctorate. I've done a couple things, couple awards, but please reach out. I think this QR code is going to be here a little bit later, but I love to talk and connect with people around the world about customer success because I have lots of ideas, I have lots of thoughts, and I love learning from people. I think that's the most important thing for connecting for me. But that's me. I have 3 kids. I've been married, and I'm married and so forth. So specialized CSM. So let's define what specialized CSM is. SpCSM. A specialized customer success manager is a customer success manager with specialized experience in the industry. Their product and services, typically a power user of your software from your ICP customer. Now we're going to talk about what that means, ICP customer. Now, I understand, some people, I talk in a lot of abbreviations, so I'm going to kind of take a step back and explain it. So the ideal customer profile, which is the ICP, that means, basically your perfect customer, the customer that get the most value out of your product. So here I'm defining specialized customer success manager as someone who comes out of the industry in which you service. Okay, now it may be easy for client success, for example, because they service customer success professionals. So your customers are probably customer success leaders or customer success managers that use the product itself. Well, you can recruit customer success managers into being your customer success managers because those customer success managers have experience in the industry itself. I like to give an example of teachers, for example. There are a lot of ed tech companies out here, help K-12 or even higher ed organizations. But imagine a teacher who a lot of teachers are looking to leave the profession right now because of some things happening in the political space and other things as well. A teacher will have the most understanding of the challenges of a teacher than anyone else who's never been in a classroom. If you can imagine the conversation of a customer who's using an EdTech SaaS product or EdTech product, and the CSM says, well, when I was in a classroom, I had that same challenge. This is how I would use this product to solve that challenge. That's a level of understanding and empathy that someone who's never been in a classroom just can't necessarily connect. Now, you can obviously portray it, you can have that empathy, you can have that understanding, but what you can't have is that experience standing in front of 20, 28, 30 students looking to solve this problem or provide this technology or so forth. You won't have that experience. You won't have that actual feeling. And so you could connect with your customers in a way that some others may not. So I believe that specialized CSMs can aid in the career changers and in breaking the customer success. And so I started talking about this. I think I wrote a couple articles about it and really kind of talking to different leaders that I coach and I help mentor. And actually, about a month ago, I saw a listing for SpCSM in a job search. I did a job search for it. And I thought that was pretty cool because I think it's a good idea to think about this in a way to where career changers, like I just mentioned, teachers, or maybe there's, product managers. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. Every industry nowadays has some sort of software product that supports them in some way, that leverages that industry to or services that industry. If it's construction, if it is, retail, if it is restaurant management, if it is anything, think about any industry, hospitality, any industry, there's going to be software as a service products or tools out there that require CSMs. So if you come from a retail background, if you come from a hospitality background, education, construction, whatever it may be, you have a level of understanding of the needs of that software that far succeed those who are just learning about the product, learn about the product, but also learn about the industry. And there's different things that we can do, or you can do in that role that can help, supplement some of the generalist CSM engagements that may be there. So let's talk about that here. So why specialized CSMs could maybe initially be trusted advisors, and maybe they can quickly run up to that status. Well, they know your customers. Experience within that industry, you know what the challenges are. We talked about that. You know what the challenges are. You know what the issues are. You know how software can solve the problems. And more specifically, as you learn your product, you know how that particular product can solve the different challenges that you yourself experienced. They inform the product team. This may not be obvious up front, but let's go back to the teacher example, the educator. In an ed tech software, sometimes the developers are probably not former educators. And probably a lot of people within the organization. Sometimes leaders are, and so forth. But imagine a teacher, a former teacher who is now part of the CS team, providing feedback to product and having and providing that feedback such as, well, that feature really doesn't make sense the way it's presented. This doesn't make sense because teachers don't operate this way. This is not the flow in which information happens or this type of decision happens. There's no way I would be able to do that as a CSM or as a leader. I would not be able to provide that level of information unless I put it in front of a customer or a customer advisory board or whatever you may have. But imagine having a resource inside who used to be a teacher, who can provide that feedback before we even put it out, before it even starts to get into the sprint or the development cycle. Saying, we need to think about, we should probably think about this a little differently because teachers don't operate this way. Or construction process or construction finance or hospitality reservations don't really work this way. So we should provide that information differently. And then connect on a deeper level. I touched on this a little bit ago. When a customer is able to understand or feel like you deeply understand their challenges, you immediately have a conversation. Think about any vendor that you may have. Everyone deals with vendors. You may have a CSP, you may have, cloud vendors or whatever you may do in your organization. You may have vendors. If someone were to let you know that they've been in your shoes, for example, you're saying, I've been a CS leader, so I understand the challenges that you're having with hiring. This is why our software tool is perfect for you. This is what I would have done, with the HR tool. This is how I would have sorted through. This is how I would have run the process and customized the process. And we can help you to do the same thing. That deeper level of connection is something that we thrive for, that customers thrive on. They eat that up, and it's really important to them. So having specialized CSMs to talk about these types of stories in your organization to not necessarily train your CSMs, but give these examples. Talk about how do you engage with teachers or retail workers or hospitality workers. How do you engage with those types of leaders? What's important? What's not important? What are on teachers' minds? If the specialized CSM can come into your organization and help you to understand a broader context of why your product is really important and how to best approach different challenges or different hurdles that a customer may go through. Funding is a big thing in government or even in education. How do we get around the cycle? How do we get around to the building level funding versus the district level funding? Or maybe, it's a classroom level funding. There's all these different levels of budget that we may not fully get as a CSM team, but we can get around if we're talking about those sorts of things. So, as I mentioned, customers trust people who understand their challenges. You trust people who understand your challenges. That's probably why you have really good friends. If you look at your friends around, they understand what you're going through. They know how to help you through it. Right. So that relationship piece is really kind of built on that experience. So let's talk, where do we find these SpCSMs? And obviously those who have experience in the industry um, can be considered SpCSMs. But let's look at different ways. Let's take a step back and look at who are your ideal customer profiles, like your customers who are ideal. Obviously sometimes, and I'm not saying this for every organization, but sometimes sales, they'll get customers who are not ICP, and it's kind of up to us to kind of make it kind of fit. That's one of the big plights that we have in CS. Or maybe I'm the only one that's ever experienced that, but I'm just saying. Who are your ICPs? And you look within your ICPs, you identify your ICPs, and then you look at who are your power users, who are people who are using your product to its fullest functionality. Who's getting the most value in your ICPs out of your product? Chances are these are the customers who have the most to gain. These are the users to have the most to gain to your product, making their lives a little simpler. Well, those people, well, I would think, and look at those individuals, and I would look for someone who's maybe been in the industry about 5 years, because that cycles about a time where they've experienced a lot of ups and downs. They've experienced some of the pain points. They've experienced the good parts of your product, and maybe offer some of the challenging parts. Now, I'm not saying they've been a customer for 5 years. I'm saying they've been in the industry in which you service for 5 years. They've seen budget cycles, regardless of where they are. They've seen, if it's a private company, they've seen budget planning, slight, budget cuts. They've seen growth. They've seen restriction. They've seen those sorts of things in these different areas. It doesn't have to be in the same company, but it's in the same industry. So they've experienced a variety of different things after 5 years. But you can also look for champions. We all understand what an ICP champion is. We all understand what our champions are. They're the ones who, are the loudest supporters of your product. We have to use this to make this better. We have to experience this to make our lives better, to make things simpler, to be able to do what we need to do a little bit better. They're the ones who are on the front lines wanting to change. If you have a change management program like Jan talked about last week, they're the ones who are helping to run it. They're the ones who are speaking to leadership, saying how much of a value this is. And those people, the power users, the people with that experience, and the champions are probably really good candidates if they're looking for a career change to go into customer success for products that service their industry. So as a CS leader, I would, if I'm looking to supplement my generalist CSM team, or mainly generalist CSM team, I would look in those areas for customer success. I mean, for these people that may be a benefit to us about understanding the industry and the challenges that they face, that they face in these organizations. So take a moment here, and I think this is really important. I wanted to talk about a few organizations that I've noticed that already do this sort of thing. They don't label it necessarily a specialized CSM, but the idea that they have behind why they hire and how they hire is exactly what I'm talking about here, and we're talking about specialized CSMs. AHA, for example. AHA is if you've ever experienced AHA, it's really a program management tool where, among other things, you can customers can kind of talk about features that they want or that they would like to see in your product, and you can upvote. You continue to upvote. You can continue to prioritize different features over others based on customer feedback. It is mainly a program management tool. It's for program managers. It is that's their target audience. That's the only area that they service program managers. Now, I've had experience in customer success for about 15 years. I know customer success up and down. I've built teams from scratch. I've grown people. I've promoted people. I've sent them off to be higher and directors, seniors, and so forth. But I wouldn't be able to get a job at AHA, even if they posted a role, because one of the hard requirements to work for AHA in almost every single one of their roles, at least in customer success, is that you have to have a certain amount of program management experience. No questions. It is, if you don't have this amount of program management experience, we can't hire you. We can't even interview. You don't make it past even the conversation. So that's a requirement on every single one of their job postings, for customer facing or customer interacting type employees. Now, why do they do this? Why do they focus on that? Why do they require that certain level of program management experience in order to even make it into the interview process? The reason is they understand their customer. They understand who is using our tools and why they're using it. And like I said, they focused solely on program management. So they want customer-facing people who have program management experience, because they want their employees to be able to make a deeper connection into a deeper connection with their customers, that someone who doesn't have that level of experience, that understanding, they want that level of that level of engagement that we just can't provide. They need people who can say, I've had that challenge before, and this is what we did to solve it. We've had this challenge before, and AHA can say, I've had that challenge before, and AHA can help you over that hill. And this is how you do it. This is how I would do it. They want people on the same level. And that is why their customer satisfaction is so high. It's always at the very top. Their employee satisfaction is so high because they're still engaged with the people just like them. They continue to grow and they continue to be a very powerful company. And I think a lot of it is because of what they do. Now, that is more of an extreme side, because that's only specialized CSM. That's only people who have program management experience. And so, without a balance, I think there's some, some engagement type challenges that they may have, or unless they have to grow their experience with customer success a lot more. They have to work harder and understanding the rituals and the practices of customer success, because everybody that comes in is a former program manager. So it's a higher hill to climb on the customer success part, but with the connection part is not as difficult. So there's more on that side. Blackboard and Newsela are both ed tech organizations. We kind of talked about that. Now, not every one of their roles require teaching or education background. However, a growing number of their roles require this. And that is because, Blackboard, just like Canvas, I'm sure some of you who had children over the pandemic who had to go online for school, some of you experienced Canvas, which is an educational platform to allow people to teachers to teach, electronically. Google Classroom is one as well, but Blackboard is just like that. And they provide an online area or functionality so that teachers can teach or students can learn online. Well, a lot of their requirements have to do with teaching. Have you had experience in a classroom? Have you had experience with online teaching? I don't think online teaching is necessarily a requirement, but teaching in a lot of their roles are, because they want people who understand the challenges that teachers have. They want to be able to someone to um, step into the plights that their other teachers have, and that way we can make a better product, or they can make a better product, so that um, so that it makes sense, to teach the way they do, or to provide the functionality the way they do. And then Newsela is the same as, our online resourcing. A lot of their requirements are people who are media centers and teachers as well. What type of information do you gather down to show your children, to supplement your lesson plans? Um, they want people who understand that, who understand the challenges of writing a lesson plan for every day, or writing a lesson plan, for example, for substitutes. When they need to be out, they have to write a lesson plan. And the lesson plan has to tell exactly what you do during the day, so that the substitute can do that. Well, how do you supplement that? We want people who have those challenges themselves. So that's what the industry is going, and that's what the industry is doing now. And you'll see examples of this throughout. A lot of times just CSMs with a certain experience, but specialized CSMs are those who are really deep into the industry that you service and can help provide that feedback. So this is very important to me. This is something I've continued to talk about, continue to coach leaders on. I really want to connect. I really want to talk about this. I love to hear what feedback you may have about this, about specialized CSMs, good or bad. I've heard both, about this. However, I do think this is a way that we as leaders can grow, and we as leaders can mature our organizations. And that's what it's really about. That's what we really want to do here, is really help our organizations understand the industries a little bit better in which we service. I think this may be my last slide, but I'd love to hear if there's any questions that we have, or kind of talk about this a little further.
Excellent. Well, Mike, I have to say, as a specialized CSM coming into customer success, when I started my career early on, it seems like we had a lot of people in the chat also have a similar path in. I will tell you, I had two roles where I was a subject matter expert, and I was at a specialized CS role, one coming in my first job when I came into a company called Bright Edge, coming from being an SEO practitioner, then working for a company that helped organizations with their search engine optimization. It was the difference between how I performed and every other CSM. And I think the experience for employees also changes as a result of that also. Like I had a better experience because I was a top performer, because I was able to connect in ways that other folks couldn't. And I really just enjoyed that. And then I had roles where I wasn't, and I couldn't connect, because to your point earlier in your presentation, I didn't really understand their pain points. I didn't really understand their business and their world. So while I knew our product well, I couldn't empathize the way that I would like to. And I don't think that I ever earned their trust. And I don't know that I ever connected on a credibility level the way I would have wanted to, because I had that gap.
Right. Yeah. It's, I think it becomes clear, we see the gaps when we start a product. So with, for me, for where I work at Public Input, I was on the school board. I was an elected official for a while, for 8 years. And so when I saw this product, I said, oh my God, it would have been so different for me if I had this product when I was on the school board to engage with the community. But I have people who've come in who's never worked with the government, and it's hard for them to really put themselves in a place outside of a private company. They've never worked in a private company to understand the differences between private and government. And so it takes a little time to get to that. It takes a little time for us to get there. Sometimes we can get that, but you're right. So you can't necessarily empathize exactly with it. You hear them and you understand what they're saying to you, but to really have that deep feeling of, oh man, I get it. I get what the problem is. That's a different level of engagement that you can have.
Absolutely. Well, we do have some questions, so I'm going to go through and we'll pull some of these up. So Rachel had asked, how would you differentiate a strategic CSM from a specialized CSM? Growth and expansion focus versus industry and ICP experience and support. So looking for how you would might classify the two.
Right, that's a really good question, and I appreciate that. I think when you get to a place where you're in a strategic role, you've probably built really good, deep relationships, and you understand really what your customers are going through. But that's kind of going up through, right? I would place a good specialized CSM probably on the level of a strategic CSM because you can make those connections better. See, when you get promoted up to a strategic CSM, you've been in the organization long enough to understand how exactly your product will tie in and grow your customers' needs, right? And so you have a deeper understanding of your customers or the industry in which your customers are in, and you've been able to connect those dots throughout your organization. You've matured in that. Now, you could be there and still not have that deep experience, but I think it's really important for someone to have the product experience and grow into it, as well as industry experience as well. And so that's why I believe specialized CSMs could be on the level of strategic CSMs coming in, because that strategic part of that. So the title is strategic CSM. So the CSM part is the customer success part. The strategic part is how you integrate or how you connect with your customers, what your abilities are in being able to talk about your product and so forth. That strategic part is really a lot like that specialized part. However, you just have more experience in growing and learning in the industry, growing and learning the industry from the product side. The specialized is really growing and learning the industry from actually the industry side.
I love that like how you distinguish that. Okay, we've got another question here. So from Andrew, this is a good question. Do you have any suggestions or tips for generalists to become more like specialized CSMs without having that real industry experience?
Yeah, I think it depends. I think it depends on the individual. That was it kind of ties into what we talked about previously. If you're really getting in and you're really understanding, you're like, I'm just going to use the government example again because I'm kind of in that space. There are a lot of conferences, there are a lot of webinars, there are a lot of things to learn how government works. If we as CSMs, generalist CSMs, really want to get in and understand the industry in which we service, go into those sorts of things, learning as if you're in the government space, understanding there's always public for government spaces. There's always public meetings about how budgeting works in government. There's always meetings about the challenges of funding in government, taxation, how it all flows. The more we learn that, the more we get more specialized within that industry itself. And that's probably where you start to move up to the strategic side, like the question that we just had. And that strategic side really shows that you're actually growing in knowledge of your particular customers themselves and their industry, their plights, and so forth. And you can plug in there. I don't think that you can grow industry experience as a CSM not coming from that experience. You just can't. But you can supplement that and learning as much as you can and growing in that space and, building those relationships with your customers and really trying to dig down and understand that. And that's where you start to get the same level of understanding of the customers that I think a specialized CSM can get. But you're just never going to be able to get that industry experience. So you can kind of grow in understanding what your customers are going through.
All right, we've got a couple more questions.
Okay.
So Andrew asked, do you find that you often end up paying a premium, so a higher base salary for candidates with specialized experience?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. So I've hired teachers who, I personally believe that teachers fit really well in the customer success because of how they manage classrooms. And so if you really think about it, customer education, onboarding, training are kind of in that space of education. And so I think I hired the teachers kind of in that space around the same level that they were, maybe just a little bit above where they were in their, not necessarily in their classroom, but with the other CSMs there. It's about the same. Now, it kind of depends on the product. So my first role as a CSM was a company called Aptio. Aptio was just purchased by IBM. You'll probably hear it's like 4.6 billion, which is wonderful for them. But we really service finance people. It's about IT finance. That's what Aptio was. It is. That's what it is. Now, if I were to bring a specialized CSM, someone who has a finance background, who's working in these larger organizations, I would probably have to pay a little bit more if I wanted that level of industry experience, right? If I wanted that level. But I would equate the salaries of a specialized CSM, a really good one that I think that can really come in and change the organization, the product, as well as work with our customers, probably at a strategic level or at least an enterprise level, starting out. So I wouldn't necessarily start them as a CS associate or specialist or anything like that, but I would probably start them at the higher end of CSM, or enterprise or strategic there.
All right, very good. Okay, so we've got a couple more in here.
That's fine.
Okay, can you compare and contrast how you might task generalists versus specialized CSMs and the balancing of them in the organization?
That's a really good question there. So, I think I don't think there's a compare and contrast on what I would put a specialized CSM on, versus a CSM, just kind of depending on the individual. But I do think, not necessarily right off in leadership, but I think a specialized CSM, I would probably put them, on some of if you're looking at segmentation, some of our higher touch type customers. I would probably put a specialized CSM in a higher touch or high medium touch segment, because I really dislike the way people describe this, but it's the higher value customers. We all understand that. I'm not saying that one customer is more important than others, but you all know what I mean by the higher value customers. But I would place a specialized CSM in a place that could influence how, or teach, or help the rest of the organization, the generalist CSMs, learn a little bit more about the industry, grow in the industry, and understand that kind of thing. So I would say, I would, generalist CSMs can be in any segment. You all know that. However, if I had an opportunity to get a really good specialized CSM, I'd probably put them in the one of the higher segments, the higher touch customers, to really build that relationship.
All right, very good. We still have some great questions here, so I'm going to just keep going through if that's
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, this is absolutely great.
So, all right, what are titles that you'd give someone considered a specialized CSM? If some CSMs on your team are generalists and some are specialists, how do you ensure customers feel like they're all getting the best service? Are there other titles like specialized CSM that convey extra credibility to the customer?
No. So I want you to understand, this is all internal stuff, right? That's just like you don't go to a customer and say, okay, we're going to put you in our low touch.
Our no touch.
Yeah, right. Our low no touch. We're just going to put you over there. This is all internal stuff. A CSM is a CSM. That's just kind of what it is. When I introduce my senior CSMs or my enterprise CSMs, I say your CSM is going to be this. I don't say your enterprise CSM is going to be this. I think it's an internal thing, just like senior CSM or whatever it may be. I think this is a as leaders, we all have to do career planning, career trajectory. We all have to keep that up. This is just another entry point, and that entry point may be higher than just, like someone on the ground level, but they kind of go in there in the CS organization. They're customer success manager. They just have to happen to have specialized skills in the industry in which you support. So again, this is all internal stuff. I want you to just think about it as internal communications. But you know, you don't necessarily get promoted to a specialized CSM. You know, you'd probably just be termed a specialized CSM that goes into the CSM career path.
All right, very good. So, Mike, I'm going to actually insert my own question here because I do
Yeah,
think it
sure.
would benefit this group. So, in a team where maybe you have more generalists than specialists or specialized CSMs, how do you cross-pollinate information and knowledge so that the generalists can be as valuable?
Right. So, one of the things that I really enjoy when I was an individual contributor is the time that we had we had these little, well, we were all in person back then. You know, we'd go into the office every day. If anybody's still old enough to remember that, I'm just kidding. It was a couple of years ago, but but it seems so long ago. I'm just saying, right, that everybody used to go into an office, but we used to sit around and talk about, you know, the challenges our customers had, you know, and that's one of the things about customer success management is being able to communicate. These are the challenges that, you know, this customer ABC had, and we would all use that. We could use those stories when we're talking to our customers. So, oh yeah, we had a customer that went through this issue, and we were able to solve it this way using Aptio. I think that sort of thing, you know, in conversations when you're in your team meetings, or if you're in your just kind of, you know, not necessarily just talking about risk and accounts and so forth, when you're talking about challenges or talking about engagements, which my team, we have plenty of meetings where we're kind of getting together and we're talking about what engagement means, how to talk to difficult customers, those kinds of things. I think there's opportunity to talk about some of the issues facing teachers and how your product, not teach, I'm saying, I'm going back to the teacher example, but facing this industry, you know, and how the product solves that. I think it's conversational. I think it is, you know, intentional conversations about how we engage with our customers. I think that's where we learn the best.
All right, great answer there. All right, let's go to one more question here.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do we got? Okay. All right. So, does it mean that having a specialized CSM is always better to fit in any CS team than a generalist? And if so, how do you justify having a mix of generalists and specialists on a team? Any pros at that point? Are there any pros to having a generalist?
I think it works best when there's a balance. You know, a lot of teams work just fine with generalist CSMs, and this is not to say, you know, promoting a specialized CSM does not take away from a generalist CSM. There's benefits on both. I think AHA, for example, they essentially have all specialist CSMs. And I think that's a challenge because I think there's a place for generalist CSMs to help understand what CS engagement is, that experience, you know, having experience working in different industries and with different types of customers and all that sort of thing can really help an organization mature. I think you know, when you have a monolith of customers, a certain type of customer, there's going to be challenges that come that you may not be able to experience, but generalist CSMs generally have experience in a lot of different ways to solve problems. So I think the balance between a generalist CSMs and the experience of the generalist CSMs and customer success mixed with the industry experience and knowledge from a specialized CSM, when you're able to cross-pollinate that and get that information in and understand and learn from each other, I think that makes a more mature and effective organization. So I wouldn't prefer ever having just all specialist CSMs. I've worked with all generalist CSMs and it's worked out fine, but I love the experience that I have on my team now that comes from specialized CSMs to understand, you know, especially like, you know, procurement and things of that sort that are just kind of deep challenges within the government. You know, when one of my CSMs are having a problem, we can always go to one of my CSMs. His name is Kent. He came from the government. He says, well, this this is why this is happening. You know, you should really talk to these people instead of your point of contact, because that's what's holding them up. That's an obscure person somewhere. So is that sort of, you know, input that is really helpful to have balance on both.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. All right, I think we can squeeze in one more too.
Yeah,
We've got some great questions.
Let's
Thank you
do it.
everyone for dropping these in here. Okay, so when recruiting those who use your tool, how do you avoid it look like you're poaching their people? So in a prior organization, we lost a lucrative contract after one of their analysts took a job with us. They came to us, we didn't recruit them. How do you avoid it appearing as if you're stealing employees?
So that's a big challenge, right? That's an issue, but most of the time I think that's not necessarily the case. That sounds like an emotional decision by your customer because someone left. So there are organizations that well, I wouldn't necessarily reach out and say, hey, look, you're a great user, you're wonderful, come work for us. But I think there's, you know, talking about that opportunity and saying, you know, like a lot of times when you build that relationship, you're going to learn about your users. You're going to learn if they're career changing or so forth. A lot of times the super power users get so wrapped up into your product. I've seen this with you know, with other CSPs and other HR tools where they're such a power user that are like, you know, I want to learn more about this, and they kind of approach there. I don't know that I would intentionally say, okay, I'm going to send you an email and say, hey, you want to leave your job? I know, you know, you could come work for us. But I do think I do think it becomes clear if someone's looking to leave, and they're really using your tool. If they're doing their homework and trying to change careers, they're going to be probably looking at the tools that they use the most. I can't sit here and tell you to to go poach, if you will, but a lot of times power users show interest in ways that, you know, look, you know, it's an opportunity for them. Or if they leave, you know, a lot of customers, I've seen that happen before. You know, they'll leave their organizations, and then I would reach out and say, hey, you know, you left such and such. I do have a role opening up. Is that something you'd be interested in? So, you know, yeah.
All
That's a
right.
tough
Well,
one. That's a tough
no,
one.
I know it's funny because I was thinking about it from client success. I mean, I hear from CSMs all the time that want to be a CSM for CSMs.
Yeah.
I tell them it's not as glamorous as they think it is. But our customers will usually come to us. We don't ever go to them because of that, right? Like we don't want there to be this weird dynamic. So we just, you know, we don't poach from our customers, but if we post a job, right, like we're all connected on social media and other avenues. And so to your point, right, they're probably doing their research. If that is something that they're interested in, they'll find it anyway.
Yeah, Lily just posted that. That's a really good point on the community. When you have a community, you say you post jobs, sometimes your customers are on there and you're saying, hey, look at me. I'd like to do that. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Well, that brings us to the end of our time today. So Dr. Mike, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise and your experiences with the client success community and everyone out there. So just really grateful for your time today. For everyone else who was able to stay for the full session, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. Great questions today. I love it. Yes. Hopefully you will come back after the holiday. So next Tuesday, we will not be here. So do not show up next Tuesday. We will not be here. Friendly reminder. It's the holiday. Hopefully you're doing something fun to celebrate with family and friends. We will come back after the 4th, though, that Tuesday. We've got another guest. Fantastic presentation again. So thank you guys so much for tuning into our summer webinar series. Dr. Mike, thank you again.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.